Yeah, well, if you just go back to that time, just get a bit of context and everything, like what was the build up to being in the Pipettes, like how did it form, and then how did you go from that point to like releasing that first album?
Yeah, it was it was a it was a strange time. We had I was the last person, I think, to be asked to join the Pipettes. It was the brainchild of Bobby Barry, or Monster Bobby, and Julia, and they, I think, had been thinking about the idea of forming a girl band for quite some time. So we formed at the tail end of 2003. And I think they've been playing around with the idea for maybe a year longer than that. But I was friends with Bobby and had been for a few years. And we used to hang out at my friend Mark, his studio. It was called Mockingbird Studios in Kemp Town in Brighton. So we just used to hang out there all the time, smoke weed, get really stoned, and make the cheapest snake bite and blacks. You can like literally, like Frosty Jack's cider and like cheap beer and like just cheap black currant cordial. Is disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. So yeah, we just used to hang out in Mark's studio. Mark was he became a bass player in Breaks. If you remember them.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, we just used to get up to silly mischief in his studio. So we'd all been hanging out. But at that point, I didn't know Rose or Julia, so they weren't like part of our kind of like friendship group or anything like that. So Bobby came to me and just asked if I wanted to join this girl band. I think he was pretty honest and was just like, yeah, oh, who was it? There was somebody else got asked first, and he was like, yeah, she can't do it. So I thought, like, you can dance. Do you want to come in here in a band? I was like, oh yeah, okay, sure, why not? I'm sure he disputes this and says that he was like, no, I knew you could sing. I thought you'd be great. But I'm pretty sure it was just like, Becky can dance. Let's see if she wants to be in the band. So yeah, they'd asked us to be. So Rose had been asked. Rose was seeing the drummer Joe at the time, so she got asked to join. And then and John and Falcone, they were already part of the band. So I think I was the last person, and Mark was on keys at that time. And they had about 6 songs or so already made, like I Like a Boy in Uniform, ABC. I can't remember which other ones. But yeah, we just started basically playing through them, jamming through them. I was always in school choirs, so I like doing all the kind of harmony arrangement and stuff like that. And then we just kind of worked out who would sing what parts. And Julia's mum made the outfits, so like the first polka dot outfits, which was really really cute. And we just used to go to Julia's house and rehearse basically. So that was kind of how what its inception was. And Bobby and Julia were very kind of clear in the fact that it was supposed to be a bit of an experiment. So that's why we were called the Pipettes, as well as it ending in ets, like a lot of the kind of girl bands of the 60s did. But Bobby was really into Bill Drummond and the KLF, the manual by the KLF. So kind of seeing if you could self-manufacture a pop band, basically. So that was always the plan. Interestingly, I lecture now, and I speak to a lot of my students who are all want to work in the music industry, and I'm like, in many ways, it would be so much easier to have all of the kind of digital marketing tools and everything that you have now. But back then, we had the idea, we had all the branding and stuff. Like we knew exactly all of those components about what we wanted to present and put out into the world, but without any of that kind of social media side of things. So I always kind of wonder what would have happened in this in this era of the industry. But yeah, they just had everything nailed. So the songs, the name, the outfits, the dance moves, the fact that Bobby even wrote a manifesto, which I'm sure I still have on email somewhere buried away. That we just kind of knew exactly what we wanted to kind of put out, which was great. And we rehearsed for months until we did our first gig. And then we did this thing. I don't know, because I don't know how you kind of first started in your first gigs, but we basically got a rent-a-crowd, which was really fun. Mostly, I think it was like Rose's friends. I'm sure it was pretty much all Rose and Joe's friends. But they basically came to a lot of our gigs. So right from our first gig, we pretty much was completely sold out in Brighton, which was amazing. And I think our second gig was supporting Sea Power at the Garage on their New Year's Eve show, which was pretty amazing. So we kind of tapped into Sea Power's fan base quite early on, and that just kind of seemed to kind of get us noticed. So really, we only did a few kind of gigs before we started getting booked quite regularly to play, which was nice.
Were they a Brighton band?
Sea Power.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they'd actually moved down from the Lake District. I think they're from Kendal, and
right.
so they were called British Sea Power back then. And they'd moved down and used to run a monthly night at its venue is now called the Hope and Ruin, but it was called the Lift. And they used to run, I'm sure it was monthly night, and that's kind of how they got noticed. And Brighton was really good for that side of things. There was a really good community amongst the bands, especially everyone was very supportive. So I can't remember what their fans were called. They had like a specific names, as do all of the best fan groups. But yeah, so I think pretty much we were consistently gigging from when we started that October 2003. But I think it took about a year and a half before we started getting label interest. And it was from the majors, actually. They were just kind of interested. I think the whole point of the Pipettes was to kind of try and combat that kind of lad indie guitar scene that was obviously hugely prevalent in the noughties. And so record companies knew that what we were doing was kind of special, but they had no idea what to do with us. So we had like Universal come and see us and Warner come and see us and be like, yeah, we love it, but we don't know we don't have no idea what to do with this, because we weren't like a pop girl band, if that makes sense. Like, we weren't the Sugar Babes. I think we would have loved to have been the Sugar Babes, but we weren't the Sugar Babes. So from the majors' perspective, they hadn't got a clue, and they kind of were like, oh, but there's like 7 of you. I thought it was just the 3 girls, and it's like, no, it says 7-piece band. So eventually Memphis Industries got in touch, started coming to our gigs, and decided that they wanted to sign us, which was really exciting. But around that time, Julia decided that she just didn't want to go down that path. It's such a big deal signing I think it is for pretty much everyone that is in that, lucky enough to have that as an option, but it's a big deal, and I think she was kind of realizing that it wasn't something that she wanted to be tied into, which is fair enough. So that is where Gweno enters, and we auditioned her. At that point, we already had the album. We'd recorded the whole album. It was all pretty much ready to go, but we didn't want to let Memphis know at that point, so we had to kind of do a switcheroo of girl members at that point. So we nearly didn't get signed, but then Gwen came in. We were ready to kind of go, rehearsed her up, did a few gigs, and they were like, nah, she's ace. So yeah, let's sign you. And so that's kind of brief version of events that got us from the first few gigs to kind of being signed, but so many weird shows. Nobody knew what to do with us because and I'm sure you appreciate back then it was just a lot of guitar.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So what do you do with these three girls in polka dot dresses that are dancing and harmonizing and singing kind of doo-wop inspired songs? I think everyone was just a bit like, oh.
Was that kind of like Bobby's idea then to shake things up a bit kind of thing and see what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He I think we always called him the Svengali because of it. But yeah, he really liked Phil Spector and he really liked oh God, what's his name? Why has his name disappeared from my head? Who did Telstar?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Oh, I can't remember his name. Another amazing producer, but also not a very good person.
Okay.
As in, like went mad. But these kind of like amazing producers who just created kind of sonically really pleasing records that were kind of ahead of their time. So yeah, Bobby wanted to do something like that, but always with the kind of punk ethos as well. Like I said, like having that kind of KLF, that DIY ethos behind everything. So that's why our songs were so short as well. They were about 2 minutes roughly on average, which is funny. In fact, we did a Tim's listening party over summer, which was really fun. But I forgot how short our album is because there's so many songs. But it was like, excuse me, it was about 30. It's about 30 minutes long, roughly.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely crazy. So I think that's another thing as well. People were just like, what? They're just kind of smashing through songs, doing all these crazy dance moves. Like, what are you doing? Like we played with Hot Snake, like this punk band, and we went down well in those crowds. It was kind of really, it was really odd time, but yeah, really good fun just to be kind of shaking things up, and everyone kind of not knowing what to do, and we felt like imposters. We didn't have imposter syndrome, but we kind of were a bit like, yeah, haha, how have we got in here? How do we manage this?
Yeah. You mentioned your backing band. Were they called the Cassettes, was it?
Yeah. I think we wanted to give them a name because I think people forgot that they existed. They thought they were just kind of sessioners, and it was like, no, we're all, completely 7-piece democratic band. We all write the music.
Right.
So yeah, it was to kind of give them like a bit of branding as well, I suppose.
Was that classic like 2 guitars, bass and drums?
It was guitar, bass, drums, keys.
Keys, okay, right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm right in thinking the drummer was Joe's in Jolene and the Jin Jang Jong.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, he left us. He left us for that band. Yeah. But I think he's an amazing songwriter, and I think he just realised that what he wanted to write wasn't what the Pipettes was doing, which is fair enough. And then started writing pretty banging pop songs for Jolene. Yeah.
Yeah, he's popped up in like sitcoms and stuff, hasn't he?
Yeah. Well, I went to school with Joe, so I think I've known Joe since we were like 13-ish, thereabouts. So we were even in school plays together. So yeah, so it was always funny when seeing him in Peep Show and Tudors and like adverts as well. Just like what the hell? He's the kind of person that seems to be able to excel in anything and everything that he does. It's an enviable quality to have.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I think I saw he's in Star Wars or something recently or something I read, which is mad, but crazy.
Yeah. I don't, he's over in Spain now.
Okay, right. And then you mentioned like the songwriting that they already had some songs together, but I think I read that you wrote 2 songs on the album. Is that right?
Yeah, so we because there were so many of us, we never wanted to get into any fights about whose song should be the single. So because of that, we just thought if everybody writes everything, then there can't be a fight for, whose song gets released, so to speak. Um, so yeah, I still don't play any instruments. Not, I mean, well enough to arrange with, but not well enough to kind of play really. And I have no music theory outside of being able to sight read music for singing purposes. Um, so I just used to write lyrics and then hand them over. So Bobby wrote the music to a couple of songs, and then Gwen did to another, um, as well. But yeah, it was one of my songs was called "Feminist Complaints," which was a B-side and has the C word in, and I was just super excited that we were allowed to put it on as the B-side because it meant that when it got released, we had to have parental advisory, explicit lyric stickers on it. I was like, Mum, I've made it. I've released something explicit. It's so good. So yeah, it was. I think it was on all of the vinyl, all of the CDs and everything. Um, yeah, but the other one I wrote was yeah, Underneath the Winter Sky. So that was written with Gwen. But we never. I think we played it live once. It was really odd. It's just a song. We never nailed it. We just could never play it. Which is really weird. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but it's not happened to me in any other bands that I've been in. But we just couldn't make it work. Really odd. So it pretty much, yeah, remained an album track in that respect.
Oh, fair play.
Mm.
And then yeah, going back to that, like say the first year of playing gigs, like where did he get to with the gigs? Was it up and down the country, or is it more based in the south kind of thing?
Yeah, we pretty much stayed in the south, and London. I think that, like I said, that Sea Power gig was just amazing because it was New Year's Eve. We were supporting them who were really well established at that time. So we we managed to get quite a few gigs in London, which was great. I mean, I was in my final year at uni at that point. Um, so that, and I went to uni in High Wycombe, so it was fairly close to London, which made it a bit easier in that respect. But we were gigging at one point, I swear we were gigging like 3, 4 times a week, easy, which is a lot for anyone, really. Um, but like I said, we just seemed to be put on so many different types of bills with so many different types of bands that we were just able to do that without people getting bored of us. But we were a Marmite band, really. I think that was always something that was really obvious with regards to things. You either got it and liked it, or you just hated it. So we were in that weird point of people just going, "Oh, not the fucking Pipettes again." Like, fuck off. Why are you supporting everyone? And it would just be like, well, we keep getting asked. So yeah, don't say no. Always say yes. And there you go.
Yeah. So were you playing those like typical indie nights kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I wish I could remember more of back then, but I always remember the nights were fun and good. Like I don't remember us playing at that stage. I don't remember us playing to know people. So I think they were always like the well-established nights that would guarantee a crowd, even if you didn't bring your own crowd, so to speak. Like the Borderline, there used to be a good night there that we played. Yeah, the Garage. There were loads of great gigs at that time in London. I mean, obviously the kind of guitar scene in London at that was very heavily based in London at that time. So there was just so many different nights, so much happening there. So yeah, so pretty much all in Brighton and London. And I see this is where my memory is a little hazy, but I'm pretty sure that we actually gigged mainly outside. Like we went to Sweden and did a tour in Sweden before we did a first tour in the UK. I'm sure that's how it went. Um, Because I remember personally, like I hadn't been further north than Birmingham until I was in the Pipettes, which is like so sad but true.
Where did you grow up? Sorry.
In Brighton. So
Right. Okay.
yeah. So it's funny that I've ended up here. It's my spiritual home, the Northwest. Definitely. Um, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that we'd been doing so much down south in London, in and around Brighton and London, and then we got picked up by a DJ in Sweden, and we were able to do like a 5-day tour in Sweden and Norway. And then we came back, and I think then started gigging a bit further up north. See, this is when analytics would have been super helpful, because like Manchester, we always did incredibly well in Manchester, loved it. Spiritual home. This is what happened. I was just like, we all loved Manchester. The crowd was just so good. But I think we did a gig in like Leicester, and that was just tragic.
Right.
Absolutely tragic. I don't think I don't recall us playing many gigs in the Midlands. I can remember Birmingham maybe a few times, but that's probably about it. So yeah, we tended to kind of the best kind of areas for us were Brighton, London, and Manchester.
Right.
Mm.
And you mentioned like the manifesto. Which I imagine was quite useful having that kind of direction all the time. But was it literally like a case of just like ticking off these things, like this is what we're going to do next, kind of thing?
No. I think once they'd got the band together, it was very much like, let's just see what happens.
Okay, right.
Let's see who books us. So that's why we never said no to anything. We just said yes to everything, and ended up in kind of these weird situations. Playing, like I said, like playing gigs where we're like supporting Hot Snakes in front of like a pretty heavy punk crowd. Just like, how is this gonna work? No idea. But they loved it, and we had like a pair of boxer shorts thrown at us, which was nice, I think.
Right.
A bit of role reversal happening. But no, there was nothing. I don't think that there was a plan, even like for releasing anything. We just got contacted by people. So like Transgressive, like Toby, I think from Transgressive, got in contact and wanted to release one of our singles. So all of our first singles before we got signed were all done on like little independent labels that contacted us. I don't think we actually set out to do like a release ourselves. So it honestly was super organic.
Yeah.
In that respect. Yeah.
Cool. And just like you say, like playing these small venues and stuff, and reading an article that Kate Jackson and Doreen Cox and Long Blondes did an independent over the weekend, and she was kind of saying how I think it was a tour when they were supporting Kaiser Chiefs, and kind of that laddie crowd kind of reached its worst for them, and like even actually like blokes trying to get on stage and pretty much grab her. Like, what was your experience of all that? Like you say, you're a bit of a Marmite band or whatever. Like how was your experience of that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it was something that we were all really conscious of. I mean, probably me. So I think I was more vocal potentially about not being happy with that side of things. But I'm a feminist, and I was very kind of like outspoken about that as well. So it was something that I didn't want to be a part of, and but then I had to change my outfit as a direct result of things, because the amount of like upskirting that would happen, and you're just kind of like all of the people at the front just trying to take pictures up your dresses or up your skirts, and it's just like just stop. It was just so frustrating. So this is why I ended up wearing like either kind of really thick coloured like tights and leggings, or shorts, trousers. In the end, I stopped wearing dresses altogether, because I just thought I don't want to put myself in that situation. But for the most part, people were actually pretty pretty good. Like we never had, I remember going to see the Dandy Warhols, and it was like the thing that the crowd just shouted like get your tits out, at the, I can't remember her name, at her, and I just remember being in the audience like absolutely appalled that that was happening. Like this is just not normal to harass a musician. Like you just wouldn't do that to the men. I mean, potentially you probably would to him, but I think he was a pretty what's the word, like extroverted in that respect anyway. But yeah, I think Rose and Gwen definitely got asked far more about like their appearance than I did. I think because like I said, I'd made that conscious decision to just try and change things. But yeah, for the most part our crowd were pretty good. I did have to stop a show. Where were we? I think may have been Germany. I think it might have been Germany, where this guy just got like topless and started trying to have like a big circle pit in the middle of our show, and there were like loads of kind of young women at the front who were obviously not wanting that to happen. So you know, we weren't afraid to stop shows and call people out, which was good. But I don't think anyone ever tried to get up on stage with us that I'm aware of. Yeah, right. I don't know, maybe I've blacked out some memories. They were just too awful. But yeah, no, I'm pretty sure people tended to be a little bit more respectful. But we had such a mixed crowd. It wasn't like I can imagine the Long Blondes having that kind of more blokey indie crowd, whereas we tended to have like a huge mix of people. It wasn't just kind of indie fans. I think that helped, in all honesty.
Yeah, fair. Then what about in terms of like industry people type of thing? You know, another quote from Kate was like, they turn up at gigs and they'd be going to the backstage area and someone would be like, oh no, girlfriend's backstage kind of thing. Just wondered, like,
yeah,
I don't know, your experience of that, like, in terms of the way you're treated, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was rampant sexism, constantly, from like sound engineers asking. Sound engineers used to ask Bobby what we would want in our microphones.
All right.
You just be like, why are you asking the guitarist who doesn't even have a microphone? Like, just ask us and we'll tell you, you know, what we need and what we want. But we were seen, I think, as kind of like quite troublesome in that respect. You know, I mean, to be fair, we weren't an easy band to mix because obviously we had like three singers and we would move around the stage, and so it wasn't like you could just set one mic up for one level. So yeah, in hindsight, they probably should have invested in kind of specific mics and stuff like that, which would have made life a bit easier. But yeah, that was something that was always really frustrating. Always asking the blokes instead of us, which I just really were just so annoying. And also I think the problem with the industry is that a lot of the time it's not set up like, it's just, if you're playing, a lot of the time there's only one dressing room, so often you would have to be sharing dressing rooms with people as well. So we'd all kind of be like, we need to get changed, none of you blokes need to get can you just give us a minute? And, you know, it'd be like, no, we're not doing that. Why don't you just get changed here? And it'd be like, because you're clearly going to pervert over us. So we just used to have to get changed in the toilet, which is like completely unglamorous. But yeah, in that respect, it just isn't kind of set up for shows, you know, like people who want to get changed and dressed up and do that kind of stuff, especially like toilet circuit gigs. But yeah, there was one, I won't say who it was, but I held on to this for years because I found the whole experience so wretched. But we've been playing Summer Sonic in Japan, which is a great festival, and we, at that point, we'd kind of, as is what happens on the touring circuit, you bump into the same bands repeatedly, and so you kind of have like a relationship with them, even though, you know, wouldn't say that they're your mates, but you speak to them, you have like a kind of a nice relationship with them. So we'd like seen Interpol a few times and hung out with them, a few times, and they had a keyboardist. I don't even know if he still plays it for them now, called Dave. But we've been speaking to him, and he was in the corridor chatting to two other well-known male musicians. I won't name either of them. But we just were walking past, and we're just like, oh, hey Dave, we're gonna meet up later or go for a drink or do whatever it was. He was just like, yeah, ladies, I'll see you later. We're like, nice one. And as we walked off, one of them was just like, oh, they're your groupies, Dave. Like, absolutely chuckling to themselves. And I just turned around and eyeballed this guy, because I was just like, how fucking dare you that's where your mind goes to. It was like we were all in matching outfits at the time. It was very obvious that we were like in a band. Do you know what I mean? And it really frustrates me, because this musician, he's still active in the industry, and kind of sets himself up as somebody that's like really supportive of young bands. And I'm like, you're not, you're just supportive of young male bands. There's like a huge difference there. Like, you weren't supportive at all to us, and that was like such a shitty comment to make. But that's kind of the perspective, you know. That was the whole kind of, that's very common to be being treated that way, with such kind of little respect, and these kind of throwaway comments and remarks all the time. But yeah, that's, I've had friends that have gone on tour with this musician, and I'm just like, I hate him. Tell him I hate him.
Definitely. And I know you've had like other projects after the Pipettes. Like, have you found that attitudes have changed in that respect, or moved on, do you think? Or I don't know, is it hard to analyze maybe?
I think I don't know. The industry is slowly changing, but it's still super problematic. I think the thing that's changed is that I've obviously got older. I've got more experienced, and I have more confidence now than I did back then. So I don't mind saying something. You know, but also I feel far more confident kind of standing on stage and asking for what I want in my monitor mix, which for years I didn't, because nobody would give me the opportunity, or nobody would teach me, or, you know, nobody would tell me what you actually asked for. So there's a huge kind of element of like trial and error that goes on. So now it is different. And yeah, I sang session for Jessica Hoop, who's amazing, absolutely amazing. And that was like such a huge kind of like dynamic shift from being in this like 3-piece harmony girl group to then singing these kind of like hugely complex harmonies with and arrangements with Jess. But one thing that I really loved about her, and what I kind of took from working with her, was she would spend ages and ages on her vocals to make sure that she had that perfect sound. And she wouldn't let anyone kind of try and shoo her off, because she's just like, no, the purpose of the music is my voice, and if my voice doesn't sound perfect, then what's the point? Like, what are people paying to come and see, you know? And I was kind of really loved that element of things, and kind of going, yeah, actually, of course you can. Like, if, you know, if a guitarist wants to noodle around for half an hour, then why can't a vocalist? Interestingly, have spoken to loads of vocalists, because I work with a lot now, and they've all had the same kind of experiences, where it's just expected that you just stand there, take what you're given, and off you go. So I think that there are elements whereby, yeah, confidence, experience naturally enables you to do something, you know, to approach things differently. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the industry is changing for the better. There's still not enough women working in the industry, basically. There needs to be more kind of female sound engineers and promoters, and bands, quite frankly. You know, I think for there to be any kind of real sea change, and the industry itself just needs a shift, I think, anyway. I left my last band because I was pregnant, and it kind of became really obvious that just wasn't gonna work for what they wanted to do. And I think that's such a shame, and it's just because the industry just doesn't allow kind of women to be pregnant and to have young kids, and for you to still be able to operate within it. So I think that it's been interesting because it just changes, like as you get older and you experience different things, your kind of view and perspective of the industry is kind of what changes. I'm not sure that the industry itself has changed enough personally, but I don't know, hopefully I'm wrong. There's like loads of young women out there in the industry going, no, it's bloody great. But I doubt it.
Yeah, yeah. So just going back, you kind of mentioned, you were building your reputation in the lead up to getting a record deal. How big a role did people at NME play in that? Like, do you remember getting a lot of attention from them at the time or anything?
No, they hated us.
Oh, right.
um, I think we had one good review from them. But no, I think we always remarked about the fact that we seemed to do incredibly well, considering that the NME never really kind of adopted us. But then I suppose we, like growing up, we used to read it religiously, and you could absolutely sense that kind of we make or break bands attitude kind of coming from it. So in many ways I think we were all slightly grateful of the fact that we weren't really talked about, because we thought, well, they can't break us if they're not making us, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I think, no, I can't remember. There was one really funny review that they did where they just was so mean. It was like, but in a kind of in a way in which we found it amusing. We weren't like, oh God. And I wish I could remember what it had said, but I can't. No, unfortunately. But yeah, it wasn't that big a part of our life, I don't think.
Yeah, fair. And then you mentioned like, is it releasing singles through independent labels? So was it like a gradual build up to getting that deal for the album kind of thing?
Yeah. I think we released 3 songs before we released anything through Memphis. And I think they were like kind of progressively larger and larger numbers. But yeah, it was, again, like I said, it was pretty organic. And we either recorded at Mockingbird or we recorded at, what's it called, Metway, I think it is, in Brighton as well. So I don't think we really paid much at all for anything, because a lot of our friends did the kind of recording and the mixing and mastering and so on and so forth. So everything was just, it was all kind of DIY and done pretty much ourselves, and then we would just kind of delivered the songs to the labels and then they put them out, which was nice. I think that's kind of I don't know if that kind of thing exists anymore. I keep kind of thinking about it, because I suppose now it's like quite common to self-release. You can do that so easily these days that you can, do you need to have a kind of indie label that's going to do like a 500 limited run on vinyl? In fact, would they even do a 500 limited run 7-inch these days? Well, yes, but you know what I mean, like there's probably not going to be as straightforward anymore. But yeah, I think I'm sure it was about 3 that we released before we signed to Memphis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or were they kind of a big independent? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Right. So they'd signed the Go team, and a few other bands that I can't recall straight away. Blue State, I think. But yeah, we honestly didn't know much about them really at all. It was when we've just met them, and we're like, yeah, these guys seem sound. I think they got us really, really drunk. Just like kind of common theme in Pipettes land, just lots of drunken evenings. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. I think Joe ended up staying the longest. So God knows what he said, but whatever he did, it didn't do us any harm. So that's the main thing. Yeah, but they were really good. They they were like, they just got us, you know. It's like when I was saying about the majors, we were like, we like it, but we just don't know what we're going to do with you. They were like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yes, it doesn't matter. We love it, and we know that other people will love it too. And they were right. They were right. It was a really good time, and yeah, we signed for such a kind of pitiful amount of money. Anyway, I think again that's like the common misconception, isn't it? Like if you sign a record deal, that you're going to get this big advance and suddenly be rolling around in cash, and that's just not not how it goes. I think we all got about like 90 quid, something like that in our back pocket. Because obviously like the most of the money went on the record, and then on the touring and stuff that happened afterwards. Yeah, I don't think we made any money until about a year after we signed our record deal.
Right.
Probably, yeah.
And what was your experience of being a signed band then? Because had Maddox from The Departure, I know that they signed like a major label, but he said, looking back, he was just constantly worried about when they were going to get dropped. Like, were you able to like enjoy it a bit more on the independent kind of side of things, do you think?
Yeah, definitely, because we did sign to a major. That was like the kind of just before I left the band, pretty much. But yeah, it was because we knew obviously we weren't doing it for money. We were just kind of doing it for love, I suppose, because it was really good fun. A lot of us were still working at the time, so again, this is kind of common misconception that you sign a record deal and then you stop working, and that's just not the case. It's just that work becomes more difficult, and then eventually you have to kind of decide what you want to do, or just live on credit cards like I did for years, which is not fun. So yeah, they let us pretty much do what we wanted to do. I don't recall them like stepping in and like dictating to us anything. I don't think we were ever worried about being dropped. They were concerned that they didn't have enough money to do things, and I think that's the main issue with being like on an indie. But at that time, there was loads of support for indies, especially from Europe. You know, like there was V2, the cooperative or co-op in Europe as well, that were really good at kind of licensing, giving license deals to indies in the UK. So they helped us out quite a bit, as well. I think when kind of Memphis were like, you know, we want to get you to the next level. So they did really, and it was only when we did South by Southwest in 2007, and that was the kind of the catalyst for the next level of kind of major label interest, and then suddenly realizing that if we did want to pursue things outside of the UK and Europe, that we would need far more money than what Memphis would be able to kind of provide for us, really. So that's the reason that you go with a major, I guess, is for that money. Not that it's necessarily like I said, you know, again, you're not rolling around in cash, and none of us took any money out of that record deal, but the point is that they've got more cash to spend on things, so you get to go and do that tour in America, you get to go and do that tour in Japan or Australia. So yeah, that's the kind of the kind of difference. But I think, yeah, with hindsight, we would have stayed with Memphis. We loved the Memphis guys. We still, you know, I still talk to them every now and then. And yeah, they're great. And as a label, it's done really well. I think weirdly, they've signed Jessica Hoop, and then they signed one of my pals, Francis Lung, as well, who was in Woo Life. So I'm just kind of like, I love the fact that I know people now that have signed to Memphis, having been like one of the first bands that they signed to the label, you know, that they're still going really strong and still working with really amazing people.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I was reading that you went down pretty well in America. Like, didn't you get a single in the top 10 or something?
Yeah, we got on the Billboard top 100. Is that what it's called? The charts, the top 100. But yeah, I think we were in like the top 10 there. Yeah, we did do really well in America. It like, yeah, that South by Southwest was just amazing. We were one of the kind of the buzz bands, so um every show we had, we just was rammed and people were trying to get into, which was a really kind of nice feeling, because I think we hadn't been in America previously, and we had a show in New York booked at that time, I think, and then we did a couple of shows in LA. Might have been supporting the Fratellis. You can see, this is what I mean. It's just like weird lineups. It's like you just wouldn't put us with the Fratellis, and we were like, "Why are we playing with the Fratellis?" But yeah, that was kind of, yeah, it was honestly really amazing, because we were just kind of like what's going on. It was tough though, you know. I think we did like 8 shows in 3 or 4 days, so it's kind of, it's hard work, but yeah, it was really 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 good fun, and yeah, we did well on the coasts, really. So we did well in New York, well in Los Angeles, and did do, I think, a couple of longer tours as well, which is fun. I mean, it's one of those things. I was always so cynical about going to America, because like, I feel it's that British cynicism of just kind of like, oh, they're just so positive all the time, and I'm gonna hate them checking in to see if I'm all right or if I want anything more, and oh god, it's gonna be awful. And then I got over there and I was like, oh my word, everyone's so positive. How can you not like it? This is wonderful. Oh, I'm such a meanie, old, mean, kind of negative person, and this is wonderful. So I loved it. I always loved being in America and touring America, and we had some really good experiences over there as well. You know, and playing, like, we supported Amy Winehouse at the Bowery Ballroom in New York. Like, just what a kind of bucket list gig to play. You know,
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
yeah. That was amazing. But I think the last gig we did in New York was like, I'm sure it's about a 1,500 capacity venue. So, you know, when you're kind of like playing those scale shows in a country as far away as America, yeah, it was good. But they I think they got it. They, for the most part, the American audiences really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I can imagine that being, you know, like the pinch yourself moment when you're kind of playing those gigs in America. That's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And like, just silly things like American tour buses are completely different. We'd never had like double decker ones. They were always like single ones, and they had like so sad. But this is what you look forward to when you're touring, when you're on the road all the time, and there's nothing else happening in your life. We're just like, oh, this tour bus has got strip lights that are like UV, woo, really exciting. And like doors that you kind of like, it was like Star Trek, you know, they kind of like made this funny noise whenever they opened. But yeah, it was really really, it was really fun. There were so many fun things that we got to do in America. And also it's like, because we were at that point kind of on a major label, there are those things, you know, like you get taken out to dinner and they get the credit card out and you don't have to think about things. And so although personally none of us were kind of like, it's not like we were kind of living the life of luxury at all, those kinds of moments just were like, yeah, this is all right, you know. But then at the same time we did all the promo for things, so I never got to explore anywhere. So I've been to New York 3 times and I've never really seen any of it. Like, I've never been to Central Park, never been to the Empire State Building, had one walk through Chinatown, because we were just doing press all the time. You know, there was one day we literally got, I think, woken up at 5, dragged off the tour bus straight into do our own hair and makeup, into interviews, and then we did like loads of kind of different like mini gigs in different like offices, and like you can't even remember who it is that you're doing anything for. Then straight to the venue, sound check, more promo, do the gig, bit more promo, and then that's it. And I just remember like once waking up in a hotel, having got to the hotel at night, obviously not having a clue where I was, and then like opening the curtains and seeing Central Park just there, and being like, how did I not know that I was here? And I still have no real closer to it, because I'm not going to go and get to enjoy this, because I'm going down to breakfast to do more interviews whilst I'm eating my breakfast. You know, it's like those kinds of situations are just so weird. Like you just can't imagine doing that in any other job where you're just that busy. The lads all got to go to the Empire State though. Lucky
Yeah, I
thing.
suppose that must have been was that quite good for them then, that you were obviously the face of the band, so they like get away with stuff like that.
Yeah, they could, but we made them load in. We're
Yeah,
like,
fair
you
play.
can load in, you can load out, because we're doing all the promo. And they're like, what? Hang on, that's not fair. And it's just like, that's what we agreed at the beginning of all of this. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of how it ended up.
Yeah.
We kind of split it, that they did the kind of the hard labor.
So you're going down well in America and sign, or you're on the verge of signing for a major label. I suppose the obvious question is, why did you choose to leave? Was it 2008?
Yeah, it was. It was suddenly, I mean, there were loads of things that were happening anyway at that time. So like the music industry was changing a load in 2000 and kind of the end of 2007 and into 2008. The live scene specifically was getting kind of hit with people just not wanting to buy tickets. So I remember like the label we had signed by this point, and the label just kind of being like, yeah, people aren't even going to see Maroon 5 or Avril Lavigne, then just not going to come and see you, are they? And we were like, right, okay. So we'd had like I said, the reasons that we signed with Interscope was for the touring possibilities. And one of the things that we did was have a meeting with Jimmy Iovine, which is like pretty impressive. But in many ways, I was kind of like, I don't really know who he is. You know what I mean? Like, don't like, why are we meeting him? Like, I don't really know what's happening here. This is all very strange. So we had this meeting. We were told how lucky we were to be having this meeting, in which I've kind of now I fully appreciate that is true. We were very lucky to be in that situation. And not everyone gets to meet somebody as prolific and powerful in the industry as Jimmy Iovine. I just remember walking in, just seeing this guy who I just couldn't work out how old he was. It was just because like he's worked with Diana Ross and he was working on Motown and and it's like, that was years ago. Like, how old is he? This is really strange. And we were just kind of watching like a Gwen Stefani video, because like Gwen Stefani still very much is like his protege. And it was just so weird suddenly walking into this thing where he was basically giving his final approval on one of her music videos, and then this woman just kind of left, and he was just like chatting to us about the Pussycat Dolls for ages, because that was his biggest signing at the time. And I guess with them being a girl band and us being a girl band, I still to this day am a bit like, but we were clearly nothing like the Pussycat Dolls, so I never really understood why he was talking about it a lot. But I think he was trying to kind of explain that we could be like that kind of like level if we, do you know what I mean? But we were all just sat there looking at ourselves going, no, can't do the splits. That's not going to happen anytime soon. I'm not getting my kit off for you or for anyone. So yeah, I think that for me was actually like the beginning of the end, when I just kind of was like, this is not like, I'm happy, like I'm happy, kind of love performing. That was always the bit that I really wanted to do. But then it suddenly kind of got into this whole thing of being like, now you're a product, you're very much a product, and you kind of are viewed in this very specific way. We got like airbrushed on our album sleeve without us knowing, and it was just, yeah, it's just kind of weird. I mean, I suppose going back to kind of like thinking about the industry and how it operates with women, that's again something else that happens, and just doing photo shoots with people like trying to kind of push us into like not risque things or anything like that, but just kind of pushing us out of our kind of little polka dotted kind of slightly DIY comfort area. It was just a bit strange. But yeah, we ended up doing like a music video in Universal Studios. which through, I think it was Panasonic. See, this is funny. It's funny talking about these things because at that time it was like, oh, there's this new technology coming out and it's called HD. And it's like, so what we're going to do is we're going to get a load of money from Panasonic and they're going to make a music video for us and they're going to use this new technology. That it was the music video for Because It's Not Love, and it's the one where like there's like a toy box and we all kind of come out of the toy box, and you can tell there's like so many digital techniques and stuff used on that they were very much experimenting with it. But at that time we'd already booked in like a 5-week tour, and like I said, we loved performing. That was just we were so happy gigging every single day. So we had gone from having this 5-week tour booked in to them kind of saying, yeah, so we're going to book you. So basically, yeah, Maroon 5 aren't selling out, so and your tickets aren't selling, so we're going to pull the original tour, but we've got this thing with Panasonic and you're going to go and do this music video, but that's going to take 4 days, so we're going to add that into your time and then book a tour around it. And so we had like 4 days there, and then this kind of, I think it was about 3 weeks of touring, but with like 5 days off, so it's not really 3 weeks of touring. And it was just suddenly became really miserable because we weren't doing what we loved doing, and then suddenly you're on a tour bus like 24 hours a day with people like that you can't, there's no escape really. We were watching a lot of Twin Peaks, I remember that. But it was kind of that point of going, oh, this isn't fun anymore. This has suddenly become a job. This very much feels like something that you can't suddenly say no to it anymore. And I think we were all feeling a bit like that, which is a shame because we'd had such an amazing American tour the tour before, that it was just so good. But routing was difficult. I think we had like a 38-hour leg from like Minneapolis down to San Diego, where we had like, they had to fly in like a new driver, and they literally drove 4 hours on, 4 hours off pretty much the whole way with one toilet break for number twos, and that was it.
Blimey.
Like it just, that is not fun. It's just not fun at all. So I think it kind of gets to that point where the shows were still good fun, but that being at the hands of a label, being at the mercy of what they want to do, having no kind of real choice or say in the matter, just suddenly I think becomes a little bit less what you were, for me personally, what kind of I was expecting out of the experience. So that was definitely like for me, like the beginning of kind of going, I don't think I really want to be doing this anymore. Like this isn't fun. This is hard. This is really hard.
Yeah, fair enough. How was that received, obviously, with the band when you told them you were leaving?
Well, because I wasn't the first person to go. Rose was, and I think, like I said, I think a few of us have been feeling this way. We didn't really talk about it though at the time, but it was clear that a few of us were kind of just unhappy in that respect. So Rose left to go and pursue her solo career, and then I left, I think maybe 2 months after her, sorry. We had auditioned somebody to replace Rose, and I think it was just very clear that I just wasn't happy and was not really best suited to being in the band anymore. So yeah, I went I think it was a few months after. It's like the beginning of 2008, I think. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, which is like such a weird experience, because you kind of go from having had this world for 5 years, and I was only 25 as well when I left. I just remember like phoning the manager up and just being like, I don't know what to do now, what happens? And he was just kind of like, well, you're not my responsibility anymore, I work for the band. And I was like, oh, okay, fuck, you didn't think about this, did I? You know, so yeah, it was like such a weird experience of just kind of having that, but it was the best decision for everybody at that point.
Yeah, fair enough.
Mm.
And then, yeah, like I say, I had different projects after that, and we were in a band called Projectionists at one point.
Yeah. So I actually like couldn't do music for a couple of years, really. I think I'd just felt suddenly so disheartened with everything and disenfranchised with it, and like my heart was a bit broken, I think, by the whole kind of process. So I actually started working at the Hope, which is now the Hope and Ruin, and was basically given the venue to manage, which was great. It was basically like the manager just went, you know, music, why don't you run the venue? And I was like, oh, brilliant, I used to love this venue, so yeah, sure, I'll do that. So that kind of kept me busy, which was really nice. And then just out of nowhere, my friend Pete Marshall, who I'd met through the band that he was playing with, Liam Frost and the Slowdown Family, I met him at the like Ben and Jerry's Summer Sunday thing in Clapham Common. Met him at, like, again on the circuit. Just he was just like, let's start making some music again. I was like, right, okay. So he came down to Brighton, and then I would come up to Manchester, which is where he lives. And we just started kind of writing songs, and I had this like really crappy setup in my bedroom, which I ended up recording our music in Colne in our friend's studio, and Christian Madden. He now plays with Liam Gallagher, but he's brilliant. He's like a Hammond genius. He's just so amazing at playing Hammond. But he was just like, Becky, with all of the technology that exists in the music industry, it amazes me how you're able to get your demos to sound so shit.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, nice one, cheers, Christian.
Yeah.
So basically I would make these really terrible demos, and like it's like a cracked software, and go up and then record in Colne. But yeah, I think we did a fair few gigs. I think we were together for a couple of years, but I just think it just didn't feel right for me. I think there's like, when something clicks, you know that it clicks, and you know that it kind of works. And I think that, just after a few gigs, I was just like, oh, this is it's nice. I just don't think I want nice, and I don't know how to make it more than nice. So we just sort of disbanded, really. And I've been doing session stuff for Jess. Anyway, so I think for me, I kind of was able to still have that link with music and still being able to perform, but performing for somebody else was really eye-opening, really lovely. And touring with her as well was just really, really good. So yeah, I did love Projectionists, and we released a single EP, but yeah, I think it just wasn't meant to be in that respect.
Yeah, fair enough. And did I read you're still involved in music? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I am. So like I said, I was in another band. They're called See Through Hands. They still exist. Check them out. They're amazing. But I started doing that with Duncan Jones, who is fab songwriter, and we'd been working on some material years ago. So he asked if I wanted to do that, and I did, and it was really great. And we'd been doing it for about a year and a half, I think, and then I fell pregnant, and yeah, it was just it just got to the point where I was like, I can't really do the gigs because they're all kind of like club nights at like 1 a.m. and stuff, which is just not practical at all. It's just not when you're like 8 months pregnant. So it just kind of had a chat with him. It's just like, it's not kind of what I want to be doing, like there's no point in me being in a band if I'm just going to be depped all the time, because I can't do it. Like, that's not, there's no point. So they've got somebody else in now who is much better suited, in all honesty. So it's all worked out for them. But yeah, he and I are still working on material, because it's like we gel, I think we make good music together, but that project just wasn't, like I said, it just wasn't going to kind of work out. So we are hoping to kind of release we've got an album's worth of material, so we're hoping to release that next year, but it is yet titled, we don't have a name for it, so we don't know what's going on with it. Yeah, and I still sing session stuff. I sing with a group called Funked It Up as well, which is great, and singing like soul and Motown and funk songs, which I personally love. And there's so much less pressure when you're singing somebody else's songs. So yeah, I'm still heavily involved in music, which is nice. It's kind of that have a lovely balance, shall we say?
Yeah. Cool. I'll look out for that new music then on social media.
Yeah, I do.
All right. Thanks, Rebecca. We'll just finish with some of those questions that I sent you. So do you think, is there a high point that stands out, do you think, from your time in the Pipettes?
For me, there are lots of high points, I think. Like playing the Pyramid stage at Glastonbury, that's just like absolute bucket list, like beautiful memory. The only thing that was annoying with that was that we were like, yes, we're first on, that's great, we can say that we've opened the stage, and then at the time, like C6 Steve was doing really really well, and they were like, sorry, we're going to put C6 Steve on before you. We were like, no. But it all worked out, because I think it was the year 2007, so it was like one of the worst wet years at Glastonbury, and it just rained pretty much the entire time until we got on stage, and then the clouds parted and the sun came out, and we were like, yes, this is fantastic. And then as soon as we got off stage, it started raining again. So we were like, it's meant to be, clearly. So that's one. Like I mentioned, like supporting Amy Winehouse at the Bowery Ballroom in New York, that was absolutely like mind-blowing. And she wore a polka dot dress as well, which we were like, does she know? She must know that we wear polka dots, right? And so we were kind of like, must be an homage. It must be. No idea if it was or not. But yeah, that was like super amazing. And yeah, there's loads of really great memories. You know, like it was after Rose had left the band, but Gwen and I still got to sing with Mark Ronson. There's like, yeah, just tons of really great memories and things that we got to do.
Cool. Is there anything you do differently about the time in the band?
Yeah, I think the like hindsight is a beautiful thing, really, but I think the problem is that everything comes with experience and knowledge. So now I could be kind of say, oh, it would have been better to have been kind of more professional with regards to things. But then at the time, I'm kind of like, I was 20 years old, you know, like you don't know anything when you're 20, you really don't. So I think, yeah, and I've always said this, I was like, if I could go back and do that, it would just be, I think I would enjoy it so much more and have so much of a better experience. Not that it was terrible, but I would have a much better experience because I understand it now. Whereas at the time, you're so present, it's very difficult to kind of understand, I think, the process. Maybe not for everyone, but for me, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people say that, like, yeah, they just enjoy it a bit more, maybe.
Yeah.
And then always try and finish on maybe a story about the Gallagher brothers, or just like a story about a prominent name from that time, really, if you've got one.
Well, I think there's the Gallagher brothers. No, I do, but so I think the issue is at that time there's a lot of stuff that was happening that you probably couldn't talk about. And you know, they're like situations that you kind of get into. where something happens and you're just kind of like, oh god, this is a bit much, but it doesn't seem appropriate to kind of talk about it. But I think that one of the kind of really fun memories, because it happened towards the end as well, and kind of again talking about like kind of it suddenly dawning on you that it's work, was when we were playing in Japan, and we'd gone out there, and three of us we'd gone out separately, not the three girls, it was me, drummer, and the keyboardist, yeah. And we'd got upgraded to like whatever the premier economy or whatever it is in British Airways, and the Claxons were there, and we were like, oh look, they all get to fly premium economy, lucky them. But we'd all got kind of upgraded, so we were like, this is great. But we didn't really see them for the rest of the time that we were there. But in Japan there was just like so many artists out there that we ended up just doing loads of really stupid, crazy things. Like we did karaoke with James Blunt. Can you what? I unearthed a picture of the three of us with him. Because I was just like, you have these memories and you kind of think, did that really happen? And then I saw this picture and I was like, oh my god, we all look like we're having the worst time. But we just couldn't turn it down. We were like, we've got to go and do karaoke with James Blunt, because it's like that people want to hear that, and that's just a stupid thing to go and do. So
what were you singing?
I can't remember what we were singing, probably like ABBA, but he was there with one of his, like, I don't know who this person was, but one of his kind of crew, and they sang the Eminem and Dido track.
Right.
So, and James Blunt sang Dido, of course he did. So we were wetting ourselves. We were just absolutely wetting ourselves. That was really, really funny, because we were just kind of like, this is like, they didn't want the boys to come, they just wanted us to come. So it's all a bit fucking weird and creepy anyway. But yeah, we were like, we've got to know what does he sing at karaoke, and then obviously that's what he sings. But yeah, so that was fun. He was perfectly polite, it wasn't actually that kind of creepy. The crew guy was more creepy. But yeah, that was just a really fun trip. And then we met up with the Claxons on like one of the last nights. We ended up doing karaoke with another session with like three other bands who were out there, and I can't remember who they were, but it was just kind of that situation where there were so many bands from Britain doing Summer Sonic that you all just end up kind of getting taken out. But yeah, we met up with the Claxons in like a kind of, I think it was like a rum bar, and got hideously trashed with them, like absolutely hideously trashed, and then ended up having like 3 hours sleep before a 14-hour flight back to the UK. We had to there's this picture where when we came down to the lobby in the morning, and like people were like, Pipettes, like, want a picture with you, and we're all just kind of grey, you just have drunk far too much and been up far too long. Because that's the thing, we discovered Pocari Sweat when we were in Japan. I don't know if you've had it, but it's amazing. It's like an ionized water, so because obviously it's so hot in Japan in summer, so they have like these kind of, to get the ions back in and the good salts back into your body. So we found Pocari Sweat, and we found that if you mixed it with vodka, you got absolutely shit faced. It was like a really, really hilarious drunk. I don't know the science, but we were all like, it must, because of the salts, it must just get into your bloodstream quicker. Anyway, so we'd all just got completely, we'd be like in drinking Pocari Sweat, so then went out with the Claxons, got absolutely trashed, and then had this awful picture with fans, and then got on a flight where we would all been separated, and I ended up sitting in the middle aisle on a 14-hour non-stop flight next to this Japanese guy who looked incredibly awkward and uncomfortable with the fact that I was sat next to him, and then the guitar tech for Travis, who would not stop talking to me like the whole way back, and I was just, that's the worst.
For 14 hours,
pretty much. When you just, because I couldn't sleep. I'm just a terrible sleeper, so I don't sleep when I'm on transport. So I was just like, had headphones in, and he'd just kind of just keep tapping me on the shoulder to tell me some story or
other. Very nice.
It was so annoying. 14 hours. It's like playing Tetris and everything. Like, fuck off, leave me alone. I'm dying inside. So yeah, that Japanese trip, that was really fun, just because of who we got to meet, what we got to do, and so yeah, that will always stay in my memory.